airfares confound people, particularly if you fly less than half a dozen times a year. It's this giant mystery, this puzzle. You can't even figure out where the pieces go to try to get a deal. And so, as you have almost certainly heard me say, my rule is I find a deal and then figure out why I want to go there. Once a year, I take our team to our staff meetings wherever in the world the best deal is. And we've been all over the world. We've been all over Asia. We've been to Australia. We've been to all over Europe, South Africa. Did I miss any parts of the world? Hawaii,
America.
South America, Hawaii. We have not been to Antarctica.
No.
We've been to everywhere. And so I called you the other day, Krista, because we're trying to figure out where in 24 we're going on staff trip. And so the deals to Europe have been non-deal deals lately. And then some deals popped up in the last week, and they were pretty good. And I thought, you know what? Travel's softening. I talked myself out of booking. So we were right at the cusp of asking the staffers if anybody who wanted to go to this destination and then this other destination. And I just said, nope, let's wait. And that's how I play the game, is I wait for the deal. If you leave the calendar as open as possible and you let the whole world be your potential destination, you end up going everywhere in the world, but for typically a third, a fourth, a fifth of what people pay who say, I want to go here on this date. Not a good way to get things done. But there's also, out of the United States, there's opened up these massive gaps in the prices on international trips based on what you use as your international gateway. Not where you live, but where you actually depart on the trip. And what used to be known as Scott's Cheap Flights, now known as Going, crunched all the numbers of all the deals they found over the last year, and they have found what I have found, that departures out of New York are the cheapest in the United States. That if you take a domestic flight to New York and start your international trip from New York, you will end up saving so much money. And I've found lately that there have been cases where I'm able to buy the fare at 1/3 the cost out of New York what it is out of my home city. 1/3 of the cost. I mean, that's a massive difference. That means you can take 3 people for the price of 1, but you do have the cost of getting to New York first. But they didn't just say New York. They listed them in order. Number 2, Boston. Boston is in a Donnybrook for international fares right now, particularly to Europe, because Delta Airlines senses weakness in JetBlue, and both domestic and international fares out of Boston have been getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as Delta smells blood in the water. Is that the expression? And Yep. They are trying to destroy JetBlue. So as Delta engages in what antitrust people might say predatory pricing, other people might say just vicious competition, temporarily fares in Boston, both domestic and international, overall have become the second cheapest in the United States. So people in the Northeast and New England would be well advised to check fares out of Boston when you're going somewhere if you're a couple hours drive from Boston. Third place, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was not historically a bargain airport, air region, but there's enormous fights going on, both international and domestic, with the fares out of BWI, Baltimore Washington International, and out of Washington Dulles. Forget Reagan National. Fares out of there are extremely high. But the two airports are vying for market share, and United is trying to own Dulles. Southwest own Baltimore, but a bunch of other airlines also are in that mix, and it's leading to much lower fares out of those two. Los Angeles is the West Coast airport you want to know about for travel when you're going particularly to Asia. But because, again, an extreme market share war between Alaska Airlines and Southwest has made LA a real bargain airport. And none of the three full-fare airlines, American, United, or Delta, are strong in Los Angeles. And so that has made the market much more wide open. And so the airfares tend to be significantly lower than elsewhere in the country. So you've got these big markets that now have become real winners for people looking to save money. And in the Midwest, I didn't mention any place in the Midwest, Chicago comes in fifth place because there's enormous population. If you draw a big circle past Chicagoland for people going international, people in Indianapolis can go up to Chicago, people in Milwaukee can come down to Chicago, and so it is the airport of choice if you live within a few hours drive from Chicago to get a much lower fare. So I'm going to stop with the top five, because the point is we don't think that way when we're looking to buy an international ticket. We think local, but you think local to your wallet's great harm. You also have inconvenience. And if you go to one of these airports, you're having to fly to it, you need to give yourself plenty of buffer that you do not miss your international flight. I mean, so many people I know who take cheap tickets out of New York, go a day or two early, and have a little side trip to New York before they take their international flight to make sure they don't miss it. Because you miss that international flight, doesn't matter how cheap it was, you lost all that money. Now, the baggage thing. This story got a lot of play. It's been all over the place. United lost this young person's luggage. The individual was, her name was Ruby, and she'd flown from Denver to Baltimore for a lacrosse tournament. And she was a goalie on the lacrosse team. And her mom, Sandra, and Ruby were flying back on United from Baltimore to Chicago, changed in Chicago. And think about that. That's two of our bargain airports right there. Anyway, and then flew on to Denver. United lost the $2,000 worth of goalie equipment. And United kept insisting that the goalie equipment was in Baltimore and it had never actually left. Well, what was the smart thing Sandra has done on her travel that every person who's crazy enough to check a bag needs to do? Be crazy like a fox. If you're an iPhone user, get AirTags. Put them in all your check bags. If you're Android, get one of the third-party ones that are available from Samsung, Tile, whatever. Put those in your check bag because the airlines don't know, and they lose bags all the time, and then you're just left twiddling your thumbs. She knew the bags were in Terminal 1 at Chicago O'Hare, and United said, nope, they're back in Baltimore. And the daughter needed the bags. And United never does anything. So what does she do? She redeemed United miles, flew to Chicago, went to baggage claim right where Apple said the bag was, found the bag, flew back to Denver, and then it became a national story. And United then, in turn, gave her back the miles and a credit. And United issued a typical corporate contrite statement And our teams work to reconnect our customers with their baggage as quickly as possible. And we regret that we could not get this bag to Denver sooner. Number one, the key lesson is keep your bag with you. You want to do a small carry-on bag. In this case, impossible because of the sports event. So if you are going to check a bag, either because you don't like yourself and you check a bag, or you have a reason that you have enough stuff that you have to check a bag, please get air tags or the equivalent so that you're not relying on the airline to tell you where something is when it's not there.